Good morning. Hi, Joris. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Joanna. Thank you for having me.
Joris, you're based in the Netherlands and you're currently working for a logistics company. But you started your career in Shanghai. So, having grown up in the Netherlands, how did you find it adjusting to work life in China?
Since for me it was my first job experience, I think everybody coming out of university needs to get used to the whole
Yes, it's
work
a very
experience
different
anyway.
environment.
Um, so that was one thing I was getting used to, but going to China, I think culturally it's quite different. I think Dutch in general are quite direct. They are quite to the point in coming out with their opinion. And I think in China, I needed some more patience. It sometimes took longer to get the information that you were asking for.
hmm
Uh, so I think this was more of a challenging point from the beginning.
And did you sort of make any mistakes along the way that helped with that learning that you're happy to share or not?
I think for me, it's more becoming aware along the time that people have different viewpoints and being aware of this. And not making too many assumptions beforehand. And that I think I really grew in this over time, and that helped me deal with those kind of situations. I always found it very interesting when I heard foreigners who had just recently arrived in Shanghai get very frustrated about how things were going, and then I was like, well, yeah. Once you've been there for a longer time and you're aware of this and you're more patient and accepting in how some things are going, I think it also allows you to deal with it more easily, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's a certain way of doing business and you have to fit into that culture and the hierarchy and the expectation of steps.
And I think the hierarchy is actually a good point that you mentioned, because that's also definitely very different with the Netherlands, where a lot of organizations are quite flatly organized. Asia is more hierarchical, and you find that communicating with other people, sometimes they're less inclined to share their opinion because they either don't think it's their place to voice it, or also from this perspective, patience is, I think, required to give people the space and the confidence that actually it is, well, okay is not the right word, but that there is a space to share opinions and work together to a solution or a common goal, common target.
Yeah, absolutely. Having worked with both Dutch colleagues and having worked in China, I can see there's a very different style in both places, as you say, around the likelihood of people speaking up and raising their ideas. And I found in China, you had to make sure you didn't give your idea first as the senior person, or that would be it. And everybody would just assume that you were right and follow. So you had to create a space that encouraged those ideas and that was what you wanted from them.
Exactly. And perhaps patience sounds like you're avoiding the thing, but I really found that giving some things a little bit more time was sometimes more productive than trying to chase or rush things by voicing your own opinion first, because then you actually don't get that input that you're actually seeking from the rest, the people around you.
I agree. Patience is a very valuable skill as you move to a new culture, just in terms of understanding and differences. And as you then returned to the Netherlands, you've sort of worked in the Netherlands for the first time in your career. How has that adjustment gone the other way? Is there any reverse culture shock?
There was definitely reverse culture shock, but it was also a bit of a timely situation. I moved back to the Netherlands like 1 month before the whole COVID episode occurred.
Good timing.
So that it was good timing to move back and experience that. It made adjusting back into the Netherlands a bit more difficult. But over time, yeah, things are improving. I think for me personally, the two jobs that I have worked in since coming back to the Netherlands are both completely remotely. So that face-to-face interaction is there in a limited sense. So that's a whole new adjustment of working in the remote space and navigating the cultural aspects there, I think. And I still work in a very international environment, so that's still, yeah. I'm not based in a different country anymore, but the majority of the people I work with are not Dutch, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got a multicultural environment still to navigate and understand different approaches.
But now in a virtual situation,
which is so different. And I know because I was in China through some of the COVID time, everyone was very keen to get back into the office and to meet customers again, because the face-to-face bit is so important in Asia, I would say. Yeah. More so than in Europe and Americas, maybe, where people have become more comfortable with virtual.
Yeah, this is more a bit of an assumption on my side, but I would say if you are working with a culture that is more outspoken and voicing their opinion, then working in an online environment can still be very productive, because people will say what's on their mind anyway. But if you work in a culture where there's a lot of body language and how do you call this, unwritten rules that go around in the interpersonal interaction, then an online environment makes it very challenging.
Yeah, agreed. And what do you miss about China, having left?
There's a lot to miss. I would say the friends, the people, the whole environment. I found Shanghai is a very energizing city. Surprisingly, how many things you can get done there in a day and then still not feel tired. Maybe by the end of the week, but still. But for me, after 10 years, it was also the right time to leave and to search for something different. So no regrets about leaving, but obviously there's many aspects of life in Shanghai that I found interesting, that I enjoyed, and that I, to a certain degree, definitely miss.
Tips for people who are thinking about moving to China for work?
I think, well, first of all, I think your social surrounding is very important starting in a new place. And I think people should be aware of this before they move. And think about how they would like to approach this, or at least how they would like to approach it, how they at least give it some thought before you go. Because if you get sucked into your job directly in a new place, it's very difficult to meet new people, and that social surrounding that you have is necessary to find the confidence and to feel at home in a new place, and therefore also excel in your place. Excel in your work, in your professional life.
Of course, yeah.
So for me, sports has, for instance, always been a very good way to meet new people in the starting point. I do think Shanghai, or China in general, the international community is very welcoming to new people. So it's not difficult to meet new people, but you just have to make sure that you're open to it yourself as well to make it happen.
Yeah, I must admit, I found, particularly if you go in a more senior level, it is harder to create that work buddies that you might have done at the start of your career in your home country. That's not likely to happen. So you've got to find the space outside of work to find like-minded people and an outlet.
Exactly. And if you don't make that happen, then you really get sucked into just doing the work aspect. And then you come back to the apartment or the place where you live, and you get into this routine where it's just work. And then it becomes very difficult to adjust to a new country or a new city or a different place where you're living. Yeah.
And I agree, Shanghai is such a vibrant city and so much to see and explore and do. I definitely miss that.
Yeah.
Right, well, thank you very much, Joris. We've sort of whistle-stop tour through your time in Shanghai. and back to the Netherlands. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you as well. It was good talking to you again.